Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Jill McConaughey, and I'm the Manager of Marketing and Customer Success here at LinkPoint 360. Thank you all for joining me today, whether it's your morning or your lunch break. I appreciate your time and hope today's content will be helpful to you as you're looking at more ways to make your Salesforce adoption on the whole more successful. CRM systems have a reputation for being complicated. And in many ways, they certainly can be and certainly are. The flexibility and the configuration that can seem endless, and certainly no two instances of Salesforce or other CRMs are even alike. So that flexibility and control that you get also can create a little bit of a struggle during setup, during deployment, and during the act of getting users to actually engage with the CRM. But while these systems are complex for Salesforce admins or managers and even business operations teams, since it's their job to actually think across the organization and see through that execution, these don't need to be difficult for the end users. When you're introducing Salesforce or a similar CRM to an end user, there are ways to make it less overwhelming for them. So today I'll be presenting some ways that you can simplify Salesforce use for your end users across your company, since many of them will have one major workflow item in common. They're heavy email users. So before I get started with the content today, I do want to go over a few brief housekeeping notes. All attendees are muted and placed in listen-only mode for the duration of the webinar. And in the GoToWebinar viewer, you can make the presentation full screen for easier viewing. You can feel free to submit any questions or your own use cases for discussion in the questions section on the GoToWebinar panel. I will stop along the way to review those, see if there's any questions or issues in the chat or in the questions section, and we'll also have time at the end of the presentation, hopefully, for some live Q&A if you have something that you'd like me to cover for you. I am also recording the webinar, so everyone will receive a link to this recording later today, and you can share it with colleagues or other stakeholders in your organization. Now, LinkPoint 360 has provided email integration for over 17 years, and our focus has always been on enhancing the end user productivity while simplifying and improving CRM use. LinkPoint Connect itself is designed to streamline how users work between their email and their CRM systems, either by adding information to the CRM or by allowing users to view CRM information in the email application itself. We do currently offer 3 different editions, and these address different use cases or customer platform requirements. You'll see each of these in action today, but as a general overview, our desktop edition is our classic for PC users. It's what most of our customers are the most familiar with or most comfortable with. That's going to allow you to view CRM info in a side panel, record emails, and run a variety of data sync options. More recently, our Desktop Plus edition allows you to add a layer of meeting notes integration, and you'll get to see that today. And you can capture those notes and update specific Salesforce fields. So it's another layer of being able to get users to populate Salesforce without having to actually go into Salesforce. And finally, our Cloud Edition, that's going to be our most recent version, and this offers an alternative for companies who have cross-platform users. So it's a server-side product, it works for Mac, it works for mobile, it works basically wherever you work with your email and Salesforce. So I like to preface these calls up front because you will see in today's discussion all 3 editions in action in various ways, and I'm going to start out with a few common ways that our clients have found can simplify their email and Salesforce adoption with an email integration solution. And again, like I said, along the way, I will stop to see if you have any comments or questions, if you have your own examples or unique environments. I am going to be demoing with Outlook and OWA today, but we do offer options for IBM Notes users as well. So if you have specific questions, please send those my way, and I'll make sure to answer those as well as the ones that were submitted during the registration process that I have on hand here. So to start with today, I'm going to talk about how to record emails automatically. That certainly guarantees some adoption and some Salesforce data population if you're able to automate that. We'll talk about how to create new records, which is key to Salesforce use. You need those records and you need them created correctly. We'll talk a little bit about entering meeting or call notes, and that can be on the sales side, it can be on the support side, a couple different applications. And then calendars, how to get those updated so that when you're running your reports, you have accurate information to work off of. So I'm going to switch my screen here, and we'll start out with the automatic email sync. So let me just pull this over, and hopefully everyone can see my web browser. So one of the main reasons customers come to us is to solve email recording. And while we offer many different ways to do this, and I spoke about the different additions that we do have, I'd like to spend some time showing you the option that simplifies this the most. And so that's going to be the automatic syncing of emails. In this case, we're going to be using our Cloud Edition option, and this is the best fit for that. I do want to point out this currently supports Exchange and Salesforce, so if you're running Domino server for Lotus Notes, we don't support that currently, but it is on the roadmap. So when you're using Cloud Edition, everything is accessible through the web browser. So I'm logged into an existing account, and whether you're an end user setting up your own or you're an admin, you can actually establish these settings for entire groups of users. You're going to want to look down here at the sync jobs. You're going to go to your email, and you have this option, actually this one, to attempt to sync all emails. Now, what this does when you select this option is it tells our system to go ahead and automatically sync at a set interval. I think it's usually roughly once an hour. Go into my Exchange account and look at what's come in and what I've sent out. And then compare those recipients or those senders by email address to Salesforce records. And if you find a match, sync the email. So it's going to automatically record all of that information for you. Now, it will not sync if there is not a match because it will have nowhere to place that item. But we do have an option or a place in our system where you can see what those emails were that did not sync and give users the ability to actually create the contacts or the leads so that the next time this runs, it will pick up those emails automatically and sync them over. Just because I'm on this screen and I know I'm talking high level about email auto syncing, the core functionality on email sync is so simple that these are the only settings that are included. You can set your sync frequency, you can change how your email type is loaded into Salesforce, and those will be unique to you. So if you're, for reporting purposes, want your activities to be set a certain way, you can do that. And you do even have the option to automatically record attachments with those automatically recorded emails if you want, depending on your Salesforce storage. So I like to show this screen because it is so basic that you're really able to have a lot of control over how your data moves between the systems without a whole lot of end user interaction. Admins can set this for groups of users or globally for an entire subscription. You can also lock the settings down. So the end user experience can be highly interactive. You can let everybody set things the way that they would like to set them. Or you can set this so that once they authenticate and connect to Salesforce and Exchange, the system automatically follows the rules that you set. They have essentially no more say over how their data moves because you have established how you want their data to move. So that's our Cloud Edition automatic email sync. I will throw in there, I know it's slightly off topic since I'm trying to keep it simple in today's webinar. There are other options, and I'm sure you see this one here. So if you're looking for something a little bit more selective rather than automatic, a Cloud Edition does also support that. So if you have interest in this version of our software and you'd like more information, I can certainly send that over. There's definitely a lot of resources to go with that. And I'm checking here to see if there are any questions. So I'm going to pause for just a second and make sure I'm not missing anything along the way while I switch us over to the next topic. Okay, looks like we're all good. So the next thing I want to talk about is another way that you can simplify Salesforce use, and that's actually with record creation. I just talked about how our Cloud Edition will sync those emails automatically, but the catch is that you need the records to exist for us to know where to sync to. And whether you're using automatic sync or you're using our desktop edition, which is what you're going to see here, if you don't have the records, you don't have the ability to record the emails or the ability to sync items up or down from those related items. So first and foremost is, how do we make it simple for a user to populate Salesforce when maybe they don't know how to, they're a little resistant to, or some teams even say they're too busy to do that when they're dealing with their clients or their leads daily. So in this case, I'm in my desktop version of Outlook, and I have our desktop edition of LinkPoint Connect, and I know that because I have the side panel here all the way on the right. And I have this message telling me that nobody with this email address exists in my instance of Salesforce. So it's very likely that this lead or this contact has not been added to the system, and I need a way to get it there. The first way you can do that is this pencil icon here in the top right corner, really teeny tiny. When I click that, it gives me an option to use Smart Forms, and I can click to create a contact or a lead. So let's click for contact, and you can see it gives me a smart form, and it's blank. Now, this form will look different in your environment because it dynamically pulls the fields for your record types. So I'm seeing my contact required fields and so forth with my page layout. You'll see yours. And I can go ahead and very easily type up Michael James, throw him into my Salesforce, and be done. But I want to simplify this even more. I don't feel like typing. I want to make this fast. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to highlight his email signature. I'm going to click and hold, and I'm going to drag that down. I'm still keeping my left mouse button clicked down. And these little icons at the bottom here, when I mouse over them, I get a plus sign, and hopefully everyone can see that. I know it's a bit small. This is our drop zone. So I can actually let go over an icon, and this is the one for contacts, so that's what we'll use here today. And when I let go, I get the exact same smart form, completely pre-populated with all of the information from that email signature. So I've just simplified data creation because I didn't have to type anything as an end user. Now, the great thing about this for operations, for Salesforce admins and managers, is my required fields are still there and my workflow requirements are still there. So in this case, when I click OK, I get a little validation error because this is actually not a real account in my system. I haven't created it yet. So I can either go here to this lookup field, I can create the account, or I can search because I know this is actually tied to something completely different and validate the information. So not only making it simple for a user to populate Salesforce, but we're also keeping in line with any of those rules or workflow needs that you have established in Salesforce itself. When I click OK, you're going to see my side panel is going to update and immediately populate. So now all this information here at the top in this business card section reflects what was updated or created when I used that smart form. The best part is now I can use the record because it's actually in Salesforce now, and I can work against that. So I can make updates, I can open an opportunity, or I can record an email, and you can do all of that with LinkPoint Connect from Outlook. I'm going to check and just make sure there are no questions before we move forward here. And I know there was one question about prior to today's call during the registration process about quickly logging without entering a lot of information. And while I'm here, I will point out, once you have these records created, you can log against this pretty simply. If you need to create a new opportunity, you could just come right here, click opportunity. Let's bring this to the correct screen. And you can see it's already, again, populating with some of the information that it knows because I'm on Michael James contact, but I still have my required fields here depending on my workflow or my Salesforce requirements. So that's one way to quickly log info. The other way is also going to be with our email integration, where you can actually click this Smart Record button here up in the top left. And when I click that, it will automatically record the email for me back to Salesforce. So I was able to log that email, and now you see that displayed here in the side panel, but I didn't have to do anything other than click one button. So from the quickly logging information perspective, I believe that was asked by Roseanne, there are plenty of ways we can do that. And if you have other specific workflows or things you'd like to see how users would do them quickly, you can absolutely let me know and we can talk about that, or I can demonstrate that today. Now I'm going to switch on a little bit of a different note and talk about the meeting notes and call logging option. And this came from a few years ago where we noticed that more and more of our customers were asking about various options for how to log their meeting notes. So you could record an email, you can create a contact, but what do I do when I get off the phone with somebody or I walk out of an on-site meeting with someone? Those use cases do vary. So again, like I said, whether you have a rep in the field meeting with accounts in person, in-house teams making calls, that doesn't have to be sales, that can be support, it can be your customer success team. And you want to not just know that it happened, because you may capture that with calendar sync, which we'll see later, but you want to know what actually came out of those interactions and see if there is value or how to increase that value for your company. So we designed Desktop Plus Edition, and what that is it's still a PC install here with a mobile component that you'll get to see. And we've added the meeting notes component to the core desktop functionality. So I'll show you both ways. I have this really tiny icon. It's a little hard to see. It's right here, and it says to start a meeting recap. So if you're a PC-based team, maybe your in-house support teams at their desks all day and they're working with people out of email and making those calls, you can actually add our meeting recap feature to the side panel, and this is going to bring Salesforce fields and customizable questions right into the email application. So I'm going to click that. Again, bring this over to the correct monitor here. Now, I have this box that's popped up, and I'm running a trial version, so I'm just going to skip ahead real quick to get to where we actually need to be. And what this does is, first of all, it's completely customizable. So you can choose the information you want your users to capture from their meetings. You can set predefined questions. You can set the answer choices. It makes it really easy for end users to enter feedback, and they don't have to go, again, to Salesforce. It's also going to keep your information consistent, because we know all of the people on our teams who will throw a couple notes on a record somewhere and say, had meeting with Sally, but we don't know what the meeting was about, or maybe we don't know what came out of the meeting or what the next step is. And if you're not getting that insight, you're not going to have a good read on the health of an account or the timeline for an opportunity. So you can choose the record types. And again, this is a trial version, so you're seeing a little bit of a different feel here. And I'm going to select an opportunity. And this is going to first ask me as an end user, well, which opportunity was this for? So we'll select one. And based on that, the system is going to present a variety of questions. Again, these are not just customizable, but these fields can map directly back to specific fields on that record type. So these are my call type fields and options. And then I can go through and answer additional information, and I'm going to click through this a little quickly since it is a demo with not a whole lot of information in it. But you can have multi-select, you can have really whatever sort of workflow process you'd like, but these are all going to map back. So here's your projected close date in disguise here. So these are all going to map back to your fields in Salesforce. The other great thing about this is it's actually going to send an email summary to the manager for the user to tell them, there we go, to tell them how the meeting went and to tell them that the person actually entered their notes. So at this point, it's asking me if I definitely want to commit those changes. So I'm going to say yes and next. And the system is updating Salesforce. It's a pending field. It's putting a copy of that information on the Salesforce record. And it's also sending, give me 1 second here, an email out. And this is that email, so real time, with that summary to the manager so that they know exactly what came out of that meeting. I think it's great because it really gives managers the ability to be more hands-on without having to be more hands-on proactively. You'll know when your meetings are happening or when your team's meetings are happening, and you can see what's coming of this. So it provides a good coaching opportunity, and it gives you really good insight to see exactly what's happening on those calls. Now, I'm going to hide everything on my screen, and I'm actually going to, bring over. This is actually an iPad that I have hooked up to my screen, and this is the mobile app version of the recap feature. And just to give you a feel for what it would be like off the desktop, when you are on your iPad or you are on your cell phone, your reps can actually come through here and create their own recap as well. And maybe I didn't set this up with the correct account, but you get a sense that you have access to the exact same level of information that you would have had in the desktop version. So whether you're on your desktop or you're on your mobile, definitely have access to both here. I'm going to stop again and just make sure we haven't lost anybody along the way, see if there are any other questions before I switch into the calendar sync. Oh, and we have a question. Let's see. Is there a possibility for the user to select which recap is sent to the manager? I believe that you set up in the system who receives the notifications, but I believe if Sally did all of her recaps would go to the same manager, or you can create teams. Some customers create forwarding rules so that they can then take those emails and send them on to other people on their teams. There's no way that I know of to send one recap or one item for one opportunity and then send the other to another person. So, and Asim, if you have a better or a more detailed use case, I can certainly take an attempt at explaining that a little bit better. The meeting recaps, by the way, and I'm looking to see if I'm not quite logged into the correct system here, but the meeting recaps actually do also go to Salesforce in the activity history. So you can run, I have some people running reports in Salesforce on closed activities that have the word meeting recap in the actual subject line. So you can also run those as well. And if I find one here in the next 10 seconds or so, I'll share it. Otherwise, I can certainly provide screenshots of that later. Let's see, one thing. Nope, doesn't look like I have one on hand, but they do go to the activity history on the record. So for example, if you went to the opportunity, you would see the summary for that as well. So if anyone is interested in learning more about the recap feature, because it is so highly configurable, I do recommend letting us know. We can do a more in-depth look at it, and there's also free trials for all of our editions. So sometimes the best way to make sure something works in your environment or would work with your workflow needs is to just set that up and take it for a little bit of a test drive. All right. So I'm switching once more here for the final topic because I don't want to run too much over today, and just mention a little bit about how to work with calendars. Users do tend to work in their email more than their CRM, and it's typically much easier to create meetings and block their calendars within their email, and that can be webmail, it can be on their phone. But very few people that I bump into along the way are putting items on the Salesforce calendar itself. That said, many managers and Salesforce admins want those meetings back in Salesforce. They're important for reporting, they're important for planning. Some even measure team performance based on the number of meetings or calls or so forth. So both desktop and cloud edition help in this situation. And the way to pick which one is best is just somewhat dependent on how your teams are set up. If you're mainly PC, then you'll want to use the desktop version. If you have a mix of people or a fairly mobile or phone-based team, certainly want to go ahead with that cloud edition. Either way, the functionality is very similar. So what you'll do to configure it is when you have LinkPoint installed locally, there's this option here for configure. and that brings up our configuration window. And you'll see right here, I have the option for calendar. And if you essentially enable everything and leave the settings as is, you'll have a bidirectional sync. So we'll move everything from Exchange up to Salesforce and everything from Salesforce back down to Exchange or Outlook. If you want a one-way sync, you can set the settings to prevent items from moving in one direction or the other. And there are options here to actually run this as an automatic sync. So if I had calendar sync enabled, I could set this to run automatically. It would run every hour, and it's fairly straightforward. One caveat with the desktop edition of the sync tool is that the computer needs to be on for the sync to run. That's just because the desktop version of LinkPoint Connect is local, so it will not know to run if it's not on. So what do people do when they have mobile or when they do not want to leave their laptops on all the time? And I'll bring this back over. They use Cloud Edition. Same difference here. I'm going to the calendar sync this time, and you can see you have options for how you want to automate and run this. You can sync all calendar items. That's the same as what I just showed you in desktop. Or we have options that give you something a little more refined. And again, this is based on your workflow. So if you only want items that are related to Salesforce records, so your appointments with clients would go over, but maybe internal meetings would not, you can set it that way. Or we even have like an opt-in sync option. So only the items that a user would designate would actually sync. Same options here, different look to make it bidirectional versus one way, and a few other filters. The whole reason that I like to show this is it really simplifies calendar syncing across teams. And if you're using the desktop version and you haven't already, our team can help customize to preset and lock those settings for you. So when you deploy that installer across all of your PC users, they get the same batch of sync settings and nobody is surprised or has the option to go in and play around or run things you wouldn't expect them to. And again, as an admin, if you're in this cloud edition, you do have the option. I'll show you what that looks like. We'll go to a profile. On a profile, so this is a group of users, maybe these are my sales users, to edit the sync settings across the board. And in this case, you can see I actually do have calendar sync in a certain mode, but it's set and locked. So I can put these little locks on. And if any user comes in from that profile and attempts to make a change here, they would not be able to edit this option. So lots of flexibility on the calendar sync side. Definitely going to give you consistent reporting and insight into what's going on, especially interesting when you couple that with the meeting recap feature, since these calendar events should be making it over into Salesforce with the sync, and then your users would be hopefully entering their meeting notes or logging their calls to correspond with that. So I will open it up to some Q&A. Do feel free, again, to enter any more questions or a use case you might have for me in the GoToWebinar panel. I'm going to just check here and see. I know I have a couple other questions that were submitted during the registration process. And one of them is actually from Lindsay about the calendar sync. So this question is essentially how to decide which operations to prevent. So whether or not to create something in one system or another. And I see it's a two-parter. So we'll start there. And I'll speak about it in desktop since I'm going to believe that that account is looking at it from a desktop perspective. So when you're thinking about prevent operations, they're written somewhat backward. Not quite, but when I read these, it's almost like you're thinking in the negative here. So let's just say I'm turning on my calendar sync right now. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure to include it in the background so that it runs. The second thing I'm going to do is confirm the date range. So I want the last month of history, and I want the next year's worth of appointments syncing. This is rolling, so as it runs, every day it moves forward, it will pick up another day's worth of appointments. So Lindsay's question with the prevent operations, if I touch nothing, this will be bidirectional. Everything in Salesforce and Outlook will switch and sort of be a mirror image of one another. If you do not want to update Outlook at all, which is a little bit more common, you want Outlook to be the master. Someone starts deleting or updating things in Salesforce, you do not want them to affect your personal calendar. you would be clicking the options over here. So the do not create or update or edit in Outlook option. So in this setup, everything that goes in my Outlook calendar will go up to Salesforce for reporting, but everything in Salesforce will not come down to Outlook. So this is a one-way. Conversely, deselect, check these boxes. If for some reason you have people scheduling everything one way or the other, you can certainly switch the settings around. The second part of Lindsay's question, what do you do if an email you smart recorded isn't showing up in Salesforce? So let's close this out. Back to the issue of email recording. And let's say I am on a record. So with Smart Record, what it does is it looks for a matching email address. And what I don't have an example of here, but we'll try to explain is, if you have an email and nobody is in Salesforce, so let's say this person didn't exist, this doesn't populate. If they don't exist and you hit Smart Record, it will not record because it has nowhere to go. If you have multiple people on an email, so Fred and maybe 5 other people, and you click Smart Record, it'll record to all available matches. So if Fred is the only contact record in Salesforce, the email is only going to go into one record. If there were 3, it would go to 3 records. So if an item doesn't look like it's showing up in Salesforce, the first thing I would do is just make sure you're looking at the right record and or that a record with a matching email address exists. One spot where I see that pop up too, if a person or a contact has more than one email address. So maybe Fred's emailing me from his Gmail today, but from his corporate email tomorrow. What you want to make sure if you're using multiple, I gotta think where I put that setting, there it is. If you're using multiple email address fields on a contact or lead record, you'll want to come into your configure, go to the Salesforce connector, and then down here there's this email fields option. You'll want to make sure that you check this. This will ensure that if Fred or whoever starts emailing you from different email addresses, that our system can search all of your email type fields on a record and continue to find a match. So sometimes I see where people are smart recording and it's not actually finding the match, and that's because they don't have this option turned on. So hopefully that helps with that situation. And Lindsay, if you need anything else from us, more than welcome to either send a clarifying question or I can set up a call to help. And we do have another question here. Users tend to log their personal events in Outlook as well. Yes, that happens a lot. Is there any way to tag events by type and sync accordingly? There is. And if you're using our desktop, and I'll sort of split this answer into 2 parts. If you're using our desktop edition, let's just shut some of this off. By default, we're going to sync all the appointments on your calendar unless they're private. If you want to sync private items, by the way, you can. I don't know anyone who's clicked that before. But in your case, what you're explaining to Seam is that people are putting their doctor's appointments or their lunch dates, or they have to remember to go to their kid's basketball game. And that does not need to be on a calendar in Salesforce most of the time. So what we can do in desktop is our professional services team can make a configuration change for you. And you would still turn everything on and configure the calendar sync, but we wouldn't sync all of your calendar items. We would actually, and let's pull one up here. Give me 1 second. We would actually set this to only sync calendar items that have a certain category on them. And what that looks like is, let's go ahead, I'm just going to relate this to Salesforce to populate the side panel. So when you have appointments, you can sync your whole calendar. You can also relate them to specific additional records. A better use case here would probably be to tag this back to the account record. So let's just grab that too. And if you're in that sort of opt-in mode where we customize the software for you to run based on a certain category, you would set a category, you would label it CRM, and you would have your users add that category to the calendar item. That's the only step they would need to take. From there, you could have 10 appointments in a day, but only 2 of them with a CRM category. Those are the only 2 that are going to sync. So that's how we do that for the desktop. And if you are interested in that configuration, definitely reach out and let me know. We can talk about how to get that enabled for you. On the Cloud Edition side, just to show you, this designate mode does the exact same thing. So we tried to make it so depending on which version you're using, you still get the same feature set. So you would select the option to do when designated, and you can see here that it's saying that you would designate with that CRM category. And we have a few other ways to do it from the mobile side, but essentially you do have the ability to do an opt-in. The downside, if you want to call it that, is that the end users have to take some kind of action and actually do the designating part. So they have to go in, they have to put that category. If they don't add this category, the sync will run, but it won't see this or it won't pick this up if the CRM category is not on it. So there's a little bit of end user training involved in that, but we try to make it as simple as possible. I'm just checking to see if there are any more questions before we wrap up for today. And if you are like me and you come up with more questions after the call, I'll believe I have some email addresses that I can throw up on the screen here to make this bigger so people can see it. There we go. So I do want to remind you that you have a variety of resources available to you as you're exploring options for email integration or learning how to use LinkPoint Connect, or honestly exploring if there are other ways to expand your use of our tools. Take on another edition, maybe migrate so that you can expand that use or make it more consistent. We work with customers and prospects of all shapes and sizes. So you can certainly check out our online knowledge base. There are many articles, quick tips, other videos that go in greater detail of each feature that do overviews. If you're looking for something particular, you can certainly let me know. Our editions are detailed out as well, and I can send anybody some information if you're interested in learning more about how those editions vary from one another. We do offer 14-day free trials for each edition, and again, as I said earlier, especially if you have access to sandbox accounts for Salesforce, highly recommend you test drive one of our editions and see how it works for you, get some best practice consulting from me and the team, and see what we can do to make it work even more efficiently or effectively in your environment. We do have an in-house support team, so if you have any technical or configuration issues or questions, you can reach out to our support team. And my team is on hand to help consult with you one-on-one, find the right solution, or help you with adoption, rollout, or optimizing your current instance of LinkPoint Connect. So I do want to thank everybody for joining me today. I hope the session helped demonstrate how our software can help with a variety of email integration challenges, but also to help simplify Salesforce adoption for your organization. If you need anything additional, you can always email customersuccess@linkpoint360.com. I'm on the other side of that email, and I'm more than happy to work with you or answer anything else that you may have to ask. If you're still exploring your options, thank you for considering us, and I hope that I get to work with you in the future.